morning of September 11th, 2001, began with a kind of calm that felt almost sacred. The air over Boston shimmered with early sunlight. The streets quiet except for the distant hum of traffic and the rustle of newspapers being unfolded at cafe tables. Inside Logan International Airport, the world was its usual rush. The echo of rolling suitcases, boarding announcements cutting through the morning chatter, and the faint aroma of coffee drifting through the terminal. Sarah Mitchell adjusted her navy blue uniform jacket and pinned her name tag just above her heart. The metal was cold against her skin. She checked her reflection one last time in the mirror near the crew lounge. Hair perfectly tied, smile soft but confident. She was proud of her work, proud of the wings she wore. Being a flight attendant wasn't just about serving coffee or handing out snacks. To her, it was about connection, about helping people reach the places and faces that mattered most. Flight 11 to Lossie. Angeles was nearly ready to board. She looked out through the large glass window at the Boeing 767, waiting on the tarmac. Sunlight danced across its white fuselage, the American Airlines logo gleaming like silver. The plane looked peaceful, almost serene, unaware of the darkness that had already begun to move toward it. As Sarah greeted passengers at the gate, she recognized familiar types, the businessman rushing through calls, a young couple whispering about their honeymoon, a mother helping her son buckle his backpack straps. Each face told a small story, ordinary and human. "Good morning? Welcome aboard," she said with her practiced warmth. The passengers smiled back, unaware that this would be the last greeting they'd ever receive. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, the skyline of New York City glittered in the morning sun. It was one of those perfect September days, bright, breezy, and impossibly blue. The kind of day that made even the busiest worker pause for a moment to admire the view. On the 94th floor of the North Tower of the World Trade Center, Daniel Mitchell sipped his second cup of coffee as he stood by the wide office window. The view stretched endlessly across the Hudson River, the Statue of Liberty, the Verrazzano Bridge, the rooftops shining like glass. He loved that view. It made the city feel alive. Daniel checked his watch. 8:10 a.m., right on schedule. He dialed Sarah's number, holding the phone between his shoulder and ear as he straightened his tie. "Morning." "You!" her cheerful voice answered, slightly muffled by the background noise of the airport. "Morning, my sky girl," he teased. "You sound busy already." "Always," she laughed. "But hey, the sky's perfect today. No turbulence, just blue everywhere. Maybe I'll wave to you from above Manhattan," he smiled. "You do that. I'll be the guy in the tower waving back." They laughed softly, sharing that easy comfort that only comes when two people truly know each other. Then, as always, he said, "See you tonight." She whispered, "See you tonight," without knowing it would be the last time. By 8:20 a.m., boarding was complete. Sarah walked down the narrow aisle, checking seatbelts, stowing luggage, and offering a reassuring smile to anyone who looked nervous. The cabin was filled with the sound of voices, travelers chatting, a child giggling near the window, the rustle of newspapers and magazines. It felt routine, normal, safe. In the cockpit, Captain John Ogonowski and First Officer Thomas McGuinness were performing final checks. Sarah peeked in briefly, handed them coffee, and joked, "Smooth skies." At 8:46 a.m., the world changed. In a single heartbeat, the clear blue sky above New York City, so calm, so flawless, was ripped apart by an explosion that shook the heavens. Windows shattered, alarms screamed, and an orange bloom of fire erupted from the upper floors of the North Tower. The sound rolled through lower Manhattan like thunder, deep, angry, and endless. On the 94th floor, Daniel Mitchell staggered as the entire building jolted beneath his feet. Coffee spilled across his desk, papers flew like startled birds, and the world outside his window turned into a storm of flame and glass. The floor tilted. People screamed. Someone shouted, "Earthquake!" But Daniel knew it wasn't. He ran to the window and froze. A massive hole yawned in the floors above. Flames poured out, black smoke spiraling into the blue morning sky. Bits of metal, pieces of an aircraft, rained down like deadly confetti. His heart stopped when he saw the faint outline of a red and silver logo burning on one of the twisted shards. American Airlines. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. His mind refused to make sense of what his eyes were seeing. Then, through the ringing in his ears, he whispered one name: Sarah. Miles away, in the cockpit of Flight 11, the final moments had already passed. The passengers never stood a chance. The radio crackled with chaos as air traffic controllers tried to reach the missing plane. American 11, do you hear me? American 11, please respond. Only static answered. Then, a faint voice, frightened, trembling, but professional. It was Sarah, her last transmission. We can't breathe. Some of us can't move. And then, silence. A silence so heavy it seemed to swallow the air itself. Inside the tower, Daniel's office had turned into a maze of smoke and confusion. The fire alarms wailed. Ceiling tiles fell. People stumbled toward the stairwell, clutching each other, coughing through the thick, acrid air. Stay calm. Someone shouted, "Use the stairs!" But panic had already taken hold. Daniel looked toward the emergency exit and then back at the phone on his desk. He grabbed it, hands shaking, and dialed Sarah's number again. 1 ring, 2, 3, no answer. He tried again. Still nothing. He dialed her cell. "Straight to voicemail. Sarah, it's me," he said between gasps. I think something's happened. Please call me." Down on the streets of Manhattan, people were already staring upward in disbelief. Office workers, taxi drivers, tourists, all frozen in the middle of sidewalks, eyes fixed on the burning tower. The smoke poured out like a storm cloud, black against the bluest sky anyone could remember. Some thought it was an accident, a small commuter plane gone off course. Others already felt the dread rising in their throats, the awful realization that this was no accident. Emergency sirens wailed from every direction. Fire trucks roared through the streets. Police officers shouted for people to move back. Reporters began calling it a tragedy, but no one yet dared to say attack. Inside the North Tower, Daniel joined the slow, desperate flow of people down the stairs. The air was thick, hot, and hard to breathe. The stairwell walls trembled with distant rumbles. He could hear people crying, prayers whispered, names called into smoke. "Keep moving," he told a young woman beside him, her face streaked with soot. "We'll get out. Just keep moving." He thought of Sarah, how she smiled every time she took off, how she said the sky always felt like home. Now, that same sky had turned into a weapon. At 9:03 a.m., as Daniel reached the 70th floor, another explosion shook the air, louder, closer, even more violent than the first. The stairwell walls shuddered. A ball of fire burst through the South Tower across the plaza. Gasps and screams filled the stairwell. "They hit the other one," someone cried. "Oh God, they hit the other tower." Daniel stopped on the landing, clutching the rail. 2 planes, 2 towers. The truth struck him like ice. This wasn't fate, it was war. Outside, chaos ruled the streets. People ran in every direction covered in ash, some carrying strangers in their arms. Phones jammed, radios screamed breaking news, and the skyline burned. Papers from shattered offices fluttered down like snow. Contracts. Memos, photographs of families. Memories turned to falling ash. In Boston, at the American Airlines crew office, a supervisor stood frozen before the flight board. Red lights blinked beside one number. Flight 11, Sarah Mitchell, someone whispered, reading the roster. She was on that flight. A silence fell over the room, heavy and unbreakable. Back in the tower, Daniel's legs ached as he descended step by step, each one slower than the last. Smoke filled the stairwell now. He could barely see, but he kept going, because Sarah would want him to. He remembered her last words that morning. "See you tonight." The thought tore through him like glass. He passed firefighters climbing up the stairs, faces red with heat, gear heavy, eyes determined. One of them looked at him and nodded. "Keep moving, sir," the firefighter said. "We'll get everyone we can." Daniel wanted to stop to thank him, but words wouldn't come. The floors above groaned. Metal bent. The building seemed to breathe, deep, heavy, dying breaths. Outside, the city stood in disbelief, staring at 2 towers burning against the sky. The same sky that just an hour ago had been perfect. People prayed aloud, strangers held hands, others just wept. Their eyes fixed upward. The world had stopped moving. Time itself felt frozen. And above it all, a single paper floated through the smoky air. A printed boarding pass from Flight 11, scorched at the edges, falling slowly, silently, into the streets below. The day was no longer clear. The sky, once peaceful, was now filled with fear, fire, and the ashes of dreams. The fires burned for days. Long after the towers had fallen, the air over lower Manhattan still carried the heavy scent of smoke, metal, and memory. The sky, once the city's proudest crown, had turned gray, choked with ashes that drifted down like snow. New York had never been silent before, but now, even the wind seemed to whisper in mourning. In a small apartment on the Upper West Side, Daniel Mitchell sat by the window, staring at a skyline that no longer looked familiar. The two towers that had always guided his eyes, his home, his vantage point, were gone. The horizon looked wounded, uneven, broken. He hadn't spoken much since that day. Words felt small, powerless against what he had seen. Beside him lay a folded American flag, the one a firefighter had handed him when they confirmed what he already knew. Sarah was gone. Her flight, American Airlines 11, was the first to strike. She had been right there, at the front of the cabin, doing what she loved, helping others, until the last second. Daniel's brother, Michael, had flown in from Boston to stay with him. On the third night after the attacks, Michael quietly approached him, holding something in his hands, a small weathered notebook and a sealed envelope. "They found this in her locker," he said softly. "At Logan, it's for you." Daniel's fingers trembled as he opened it. Inside, in Sarah's neat handwriting, was a short note written on the back of a flight schedule. "If you ever lose me in the sky, promise you'll keep looking up, because love never falls." The words struck him like a heartbeat after silence. He pressed the note to his chest, his breath breaking. For the first time in days, he let himself cry, not just for her, but for everyone. For the lives lost in fire and steel, for the families' searching faces in hospital lists, for a city that would never be the same. Outside, New York was grieving in its own way. The streets were lined with candles and flowers. Posters covered every wall, faces of the missing, smiles frozen in time. Strangers hugged each other at street corners, sharing tissues and tears. Churches stayed open through the night. Firefighters knelt beside helmets placed in rows, silent memorials for brothers who never came back. At Ground Zero, a mountain of twisted metal and dust still smoked. The rescuers, covered in ash and exhaustion, moved carefully, methodically, lifting debris with hands blistered from heat and heartbreak. They called it the pile, but to many, it was sacred ground. They weren't just searching for bodies, they were searching for closure, for the pieces of thousands of unfinished lives. One firefighter, a woman named Captain Rivera, paused when she found a half-melted flight pin buried in the rubble. The wings were still visible. She wiped it clean and whispered, "Someone loved you." Then she placed it gently beside a growing collection of mementos, badges, photos, notes, a shrine rising from ruin. Back in the apartment, Daniel turned on the television for the first time since the attacks. The screen showed President Bush standing at the site, firefighters behind him, the American flag fluttering defiantly in the smoke. Reporters spoke of unity, resilience, and the courage of ordinary people. But Daniel wasn't listening to the words. He was listening to the silence between them. The sound of a nation trying to find its breath again. Days turned into weeks. The skies above America remained empty. Every airport was still. The familiar hum of jet engines, once so ordinary that no one noticed it, was gone. For the first time in living memory, the sky was truly silent. Daniel began to walk to Central Park every evening at sunset. He'd sit on a bench, looking upward, trying to imagine where Sarah might be now. The clouds drifted gently above, touched with gold and pink. He'd whisper, "I'm still looking up, Sarah." and wait for the breeze that always seemed to come right after. On the fifth evening, as he sat there, a little girl approached with her father. She was holding a paper airplane, white, creased, imperfect. She looked up at Daniel and asked, "Mister, do you think airplanes still go to heaven?" Daniel smiled through his tears. "Yes," he said softly. "The good ones do." That night he opened Sarah's old journal, reading her words again and again. There were notes about flights, sketches of sunsets she'd seen from 30,000 feet, and one short line written months earlier. Flying isn't about leaving the ground. It's about believing there's something above the clouds worth reaching for. He finally understood. Her love for the sky wasn't just about adventure. It was faith. Faith that even when the world burns, light still waits above the smoke. By the end of September, planes began to return to the air. The first time Daniel heard one passing overhead, he froze. The deep roar of the engines broke through the quiet, and for a moment, panic surged in his chest. But then he closed his eyes and imagined Sarah there, smiling from the cabin aisle, her voice gentle and sure. "Everything's okay now, Danny. The sky remembers us." He looked up. The trail of the plane glistened in the sunlight, a single white line cutting across the endless blue. The same sky that had once fallen was rising again. The grief would never fade completely. He knew that. But neither would the love. It lived in the stories of firefighters who ran toward the flames, in the neighbors who carried strangers to safety, and in every person who looked up at the empty sky and promised never to forget. In the silence that followed, there was something sacred, not the absence of sound, but the presence of remembrance. The sky fell silent that day, but from that silence rose 1,000 voices of courage, compassion, and undying love. And when the morning light touched the city once more, Daniel whispered toward the heavens, "See you tonight, Sarah." Because love, he knew now, doesn't fall. It only rises.